Have you ever looked at a big company and wondered, are they really as strong as they seem? Well, today we're going to pop the hood and give it a full financial health checkup. We'll be using a special toolkit called Solvency Ratios to see if a business is actually built to last for the long haul.
All right, so let's jump right in. When you're looking at any company, whether you're an investor, an employee, or just curious, you're basically asking one simple question. Is this thing built on a solid foundation, or is it a house of cards just waiting for a breeze? That's what we're here to figure out. So, how do we solve this mystery? Well, it all comes down to one really important word: solvency. It sounds a little technical, but the idea is simple. It's just a company's ability to pay off all its long-term debts and commitments. This isn't about getting through next month. It's about having the financial endurance to be around for years to come.
But how do you actually measure something like financial endurance? I mean, it's not like you can just guess, right? Absolutely not. We have a specific toolkit for this exact job. And we're about to unpack 4 key ratios that work just like a doctor checking your vital signs. Each one gives us a clear, important rating on a company's long-term health.
Okay, first up, we're diving into this fundamental tug of war that happens inside every single business. The balance between the money it owes to other people versus the money the owners actually have in the game themselves. And for that, our first tool is the debt-to-equity ratio. And this breaks it down perfectly. On one side, you've got debt. That's money from banks and lenders that, has to be paid back. On the other side, you've got equity, which is the company's own cash from its owners and the profits it's kept. So this ratio gets straight to the point. How much is this company leaning on borrowed money versus its own internal fund?
Okay, so here's how we figure it out. It's actually really straightforward. You take the company's total debt, and that includes long-term loans and other long-term obligations, and you divide it by the total equity, which is also called shareholders' funds. It looks simple, and it is, but this one little calculation tells you a massive story about how much risk the company is taking on.
So you get a number. What does it actually mean? Well, a pretty common rule of thumb is that an ideal ratio is around 2 to 1. So as you can see here, for every $1 the owners have put in, the company has borrowed $2. Now look, debt is not a bad thing. It can totally fuel growth. But if that number starts creeping much higher, it could be a red flag that the company is relying way too much on lenders, which, you guessed it, increases its financial risk. All right, moving on to our next set of tools, we're going to ask a slightly different but related question. When you look at absolutely everything a company owns, its buildings, its cash, its inventory, who really has a claim on all that stuff? It all comes down to its total assets.
Let's use a little analogy here, because I think it makes it super clear. Imagine all of a company's total assets as one big pie. The next 2 ratios we're going to look at are all about figuring out who gets a slice of that pie. Is it the owners or is it the lenders?
So, first things first, what slice of that pie truly belongs to the owners? This is a really important question. It tells us how much of the company is being paid for from the inside, which is a huge sign of stability. And to measure that, we use the proprietary ratio. As you can see, you just take the equity, the owner's piece, and divide it by the total assets, which is the whole pie. The higher this number, the bigger the owner's claim is on everything the company has. It's that simple. Okay, so if that's the owner's slice, you know what the next question has to be, right? What about the other slice of the pie? How much of it is claimed by the outsiders, the lenders who provided all that debt? And that brings us to the debt to total assets ratio. It's basically the other side of the same coin. Here, we take the company's debt and divide it by the total assets. This tells us exactly what percentage of the company's stuff is funded by borrowing. When you use these 2 pie ratios together, you get this amazing 360-degree picture of how the whole company is financed. Okay, for our final diagnostic tool, we're going to switch gears just a little bit. I mean, it's one thing to have debt, but it's a completely different story to be able to comfortably make those interest payments on time every single time. And that is exactly what the interest coverage ratio tells us. So the question here is incredibly practical. Can this company's profits easily cover the interest it has to pay? This is not just some accounting detail. This is about survival. If a company is struggling to do this, it has basically no breathing room, and that is a very shaky place to be. To figure this out, we have to look at a very specific number: net profit before interest and tax. This slide lays out the flow perfectly. You start with the company's profit from its operations before any interest or taxes are paid. Think of it as the total pot of money available to handle those 2 big expenses. And here's the formula for it. We take that profit number we just talked about, and we divide it by the fixed interest charges. The number you get tells you how many times over the company could pay its interest bill for the year. So if the answer is, say, 6, it means their profits could cover their interest payments 6 times. Obviously, the higher this number is, the safer the company is, the bigger its safety cushion. All right, let's pull all of this together now. We've just walked through an incredibly powerful toolkit. With just these 4 simple ratios, you've basically given yourself a kind of financial X-ray vision. You can see right through the surface and understand what's really going on inside a company.
So here is your quick cheat sheet to kind of lock this all in. Debt to equity checks that balance between borrowing and owning. The proprietary and debt to total assets ratios carve up that asset pie for us. And finally, the interest coverage ratio makes sure the company can actually afford the debt it has. 4 simple questions that give you 4 incredibly powerful answers. So, what's the big takeaway here? It's that you now have the tools you need to do a basic financial health check on pretty much any company. You don't have to just go by the headlines or what people are saying. You can actually look at the numbers and see the real story for yourself.
And please, remember this. These aren't just cold, boring numbers on a page. They are storytellers. A company with really low debt, that might be telling a story of being careful and conservative. Another one with high debt but a super high interest coverage ratio, that could be a story of smart, aggressive growth. They all tell a story.
So we're going to leave you with this final thought. You have the toolkit now. So the next time you look at a company's financial report, don't just see a bunch of numbers. Ask yourself, what story are these numbers trying to tell me?